He walked into the room with worn-out shoes and a folder that looked older than everyone else in the room. They laughed. They whispered. What was an old man doing at a job interview meant for future tech leaders? But what no one knew was that he already owned the building they were sitting in. And he wasn't there to get a job. He was there to change someone's life forever. It was a warm Monday morning in the heart of the city. The sun shone brightly through the tall windows of the Globe Corps headquarters, a powerful tech company known for its innovation and elite team. The lobby sparkled with clean glass, marble floors, and the soft scent of fresh coffee. Inside the main waiting room, chairs were filled with young, eager candidates hoping to land the same job: team leader, product development. Among them was Ryan Matthews, a confident man in his late 20s, dressed in a tailored navy blue suit. His haircut was sharp, his shoes shined like mirrors, and he smelled of expensive cologne. In one hand, he held his leather briefcase. In the other, his phone. As he sat and scrolled through emails, he wore a calm, slightly smug smile. To him, this wasn't really a competition, it was a formality. He had graduated from one of the top universities in the country. He had a solid GPA, a short stint at a startup, and a LinkedIn profile packed with buzzwords like entrepreneur, visionary, and disruptor. In his mind, the job was already his. Across the room, a few other candidates chatted quietly or stared nervously at the floor. But Ryan wasn't nervous. He felt like a lion among sheep. Everyone else looked average, unsure, too modest, or just plain boring. Then, the elevator dinged. An old man stepped out. He looked around 65 or maybe 70. His hair was gray and thin. He wore an outdated brown blazer, a beige shirt, and slacks that looked like they belonged in the previous decade. His shoes were old and scuffed, and in his hand, he carried a folder that looked like it had seen better days. He walked slowly but steadily toward the check-in desk, then sat quietly in one of the chairs. His expression was calm, peaceful, even friendly. No phone, no laptop, just his presence. Ryan noticed him right away, and couldn't help but chuckle. Must be someone's grandfather picking them up, he muttered to himself. But as minutes passed and the receptionist didn't ask him to leave, Ryan grew more curious. Finally, the man picked up a form from the table and began filling it out. One of the candidates beside Ryan leaned in. Is he applying too? Ryan laughed under his breath. What, for the janitor job? I mean, come on. Look at him. But the old man continued filling the form, carefully writing in clean, slow letters. After a moment, he looked up and met Ryan's gaze. His eyes were sharp, not confused or weak, but clear and kind. Ryan gave a polite nod and forced a smile. Good morning, sir. You here for the interview? The old man returned the smile. Yes, I am. Same role, I believe. Ryan nearly choked on his coffee. Seriously? Yes, the man said with a calm voice. You must be Ryan. Ryan blinked. How did you? You're wearing a name tag, the man chuckled, pointing gently to the sticker on Ryan's chest. Nice to meet you. I'm Daniel. Nice to meet you, Daniel, Ryan replied, voice slightly stiff. He turned back to his phone, trying to act casual, but inside, he was baffled. What is this guy thinking? This is a tech company, not a bingo club. As more candidates trickled in, Ryan found a way to turn the strange moment into a story. He leaned toward a woman across from him, lowered his voice just enough to be heard, and said, Can you believe that guy? He's, what, 70? I guess it's never too late to dream, right? The woman gave a weak smile but said nothing. Ryan continued, Look, I respect old people. I do. But this is a tech leader position. What's he going to do? Write code with a typewriter. Daniel, who sat only a few chairs away, gave no reaction. He simply opened his folder and reviewed his papers, an old resume, handwritten notes, a few certificates. A younger man named Leo, perhaps fresh out of college, glanced at Ryan. Maybe he's really experienced, he offered. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Experience is great, but things change fast. You think he knows how to manage AI teams, launch apps, handle startup culture? Leo didn't answer. Ryan looked at his reflection in the glass and adjusted his hair. He knew he was better, faster, smarter. That old man didn't stand a chance. But Daniel, he remained calm. After about 20 minutes, the receptionist called out, "Please remember, your behavior in this room is being observed as part of the evaluation. We value not only your skills, but also how you treat others." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "What's that supposed to mean?" he whispered to the candidate beside him. The woman shrugged. "Maybe they're watching us." Ryan scoffed, but his eyes flicked toward the ceiling. Sure enough, a small black dome camera sat silently above them. "Ha," he thought. "Better keep smiling." Just then, the receptionist walked up to Daniel. "Mr. Hart, can I get you some water or coffee?" Ryan's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Hart?" Everyone else was called by first name. Daniel smiled. "Just water would be lovely." "Thank you." The receptionist returned a moment later and handed Daniel a glass of water with both hands, as if serving someone of importance. Ryan watched closely. Something felt off. He leaned forward again. "So, Daniel," he said in a louder voice, "just curious, what made you apply to this role?" Daniel turned and smiled gently. "Oh, I've always believed in learning. No matter your age. I thought I might be able to contribute something useful. Or at least learn something along the way." Ryan chuckled. "That's a great attitude. I hope I still feel that way when I'm... well, you know." Daniel nodded. "When you're older, you mean?" Ryan smirked. "Something like that." There was a moment of silence. Then Daniel leaned forward slightly. "Let me ask you something, Ryan. What do you hope to bring to this company?" Ryan blinked. "Excuse me?" "It's a sincere question," Daniel said softly. "What do you hope to bring, not just take?" Ryan shifted in his seat. "I mean, leadership, speed, innovation. I'm young. I've got energy, ideas." Daniel nodded slowly. "All good things." Then he turned back to his folder, as if satisfied. Ryan sat back, unsure whether he had just been praised or politely dismissed. Just then, a young woman across the room dropped her papers. Pages scattered across the floor. A few people glanced but didn't move. Ryan looked, thought about it, but didn't move. Daniel stood, slowly, walked over, and helped her gather the papers. "Thank you," she said quietly. He smiled. "No trouble at all. Always good to lend a hand." He returned to his seat, moving with deliberate calm. Ryan folded his arms. What's this guy trying to prove? He checked his watch. Any minute now, he'd be called in. Then he'd blow the panel away. Then they'd forget all about this grandpa who thought he could play in the big leagues. As if on cue, the receptionist called out, "Ryan Matthews, you're next." Ryan stood tall, straightened his jacket, and walked toward the interview room like he owned the place. Behind him, Daniel watched, his expression unchanged. And so began the real test. Ryan stepped confidently into the interview room. The space was bright, sleek, and modern. Glass walls, a clean oak table, and 3 people seated in front of him. A woman in a navy blazer, the HR manager, a man in his 40s with glasses and a tablet, the technical director, and a third man, silent, observant, silver-haired, sharply dressed, seated in the middle. Ryan assumed he was a senior advisor, maybe even part of the executive board. "Good morning," Ryan said with a firm smile, shaking hands with each panelist. "Pleasure to meet you. Please, take a seat," the HR manager said warmly. "We're glad to have you here, Ryan." He sat down, rested one ankle on his opposite knee, leaned slightly back, and smiled with full confidence. "We'll begin with a few questions," the technical director said. "Let's talk about your past leadership experiences." Ryan dove in. "I've always been a leader, even back in university. I captained multiple team projects, managed conflict, kept things moving. I even built my own startup in my final year, a task automation app. It didn't go viral, but I learned a lot about time management, risk, and thinking fast." He paused, waiting for impressed reactions. The HR manager nodded politely. "That's great. What happened with the startup?" Ryan shrugged, practiced and smooth. We ran into funding issues. I decided it was time to pivot. Honestly, it was a blessing. I'm more ready now than ever." The older man, the one who hadn't said a word, tilted his head slightly. Ryan noticed, but continued. "I think what sets me apart," Ryan added, "is my energy. My ability to move fast. To take bold steps when others hesitate." The technical director jotted something down. "Boldness is valuable. But how do you balance boldness with responsibility, especially when leading a team?" Ryan leaned forward, clasping his hands dramatically. "Simple. I lead by instinct. I trust my gut. If something needs doing, I act. My team follows. If they don't, then maybe they're not the right people." This time, the silver-haired man finally spoke, his voice calm but sharp. "Interesting philosophy," he said. "But what happens if your gut is wrong?" Ryan paused. "Then I adjust. Fast. That's the thing about modern leadership. It's not about getting it right every time. It's about moving forward faster than anyone else." The room was quiet for a moment. The HR manager smiled diplomatically. "We appreciate your passion, Ryan. Now, tell us about a time when you failed." Ryan's confidence wavered just slightly, but he quickly recovered. "Failure is just a stepping stone," he said. "When my startup fell apart, it was technically a failure. But I never see it that way. It was a lesson. I moved on and improved." "And how would your past team members describe you?" the technical director asked. "Driven. Focused. Demanding maybe, but in a good way," Ryan said. "I don't accept laziness or excuses." The HR manager leaned in. "And how do you handle disagreements with colleagues?" Ryan smiled. "I listen, but if I know I'm right, I don't back down. That's the kind of confidence that builds great teams." The older man raised an eyebrow. "Would you say confidence and humility can exist together?" he asked. Ryan chuckled. "Humility? Look, I respect people. But in today's market, you can't afford to play small. Confidence is what wins deals." The older man said nothing. Ryan was starting to feel slightly uncomfortable. His answers were strong, weren't they? But these people weren't reacting the way he expected. He pressed forward. "This company, Globe Core, is known for speed and innovation," he said. "I fit that culture. I'm not the kind of guy who waits to be told what to do. I see the gap, I fill it. Simple as that." The technical director gave a tight smile. "We'll be in touch." "Thank you, Ryan." He stood up, shook hands again, and exited the room feeling 80% confident. Not 100%. Something had shifted near the end. That older guy, why was he asking those questions like he was the boss? Back in the waiting room, Ryan returned to his seat. A few candidates looked up. Daniel, still sitting quietly, gave him a slight nod. "How was it?" one candidate whispered. Ryan shrugged with a smirk. "Crushed it. They loved me." He glanced at Daniel. "You're up soon, right?" Daniel nodded. "Yes. Just waiting to be called." Ryan chuckled. "Better bring your A game, my friend." Daniel smiled. "I always do." Time passed. While candidates were called in one by one, Ryan decided to hold court. He began to speak louder, not shouting, but enough for everyone to hear. "So," he said to the group, "can we be real for a minute?" A few people looked up. "I get that we all want this job. But let's face it, this isn't just about skills. It's about leadership. Modern leadership. You can't lead teams today with 1980s values." One person asked, "What do you mean?" Ryan leaned forward, loving the attention. "I mean, no offense to anyone, but if you're not fluent in tech, agile, and trend-aware, you're holding the company back. That's just the truth." He glanced sideways at Daniel, who met his gaze calmly. "I don't mean to sound harsh," Ryan continued, "but I've worked with older folks before. Great people. Super kind. But slow. Stubborn. Out of touch. You put someone like that in charge, and boom, the whole team loses momentum." Daniel didn't respond. He just kept sipping his water and observing. Ryan turned back to the group. Look, I'm not saying age equals weakness. But if we're honest, leadership today takes speed, decisiveness, adaptability. That's where I shine. No one answered. Ryan shrugged. Just saying what everyone's thinking. Then something happened. A woman from the HR team stepped into the room and approached Daniel. Mr. Hart, the panel is ready for you. Again, Mr. Hart. Not Daniel. Ryan's smile twitched. Daniel stood up slowly, adjusted his jacket, and walked past Ryan. Best of luck, Ryan said sarcastically. Daniel paused, smiled, and said warmly, Thank you, Ryan. I hope you find what you're really looking for. Then he walked into the interview room. Inside, the atmosphere shifted. Daniel greeted the panel with quiet confidence. He shook hands firmly but gently. His presence was calm, grounded, yet respectful. The HR manager smiled. Mr. Hart, thank you for waiting. Let's begin. The technical director leaned in. Your resume is unique. I imagine so, Daniel said. Most of my work was never about titles. It was about people. Tell us about your leadership style, the HR manager said. I believe in listening first, Daniel said. A true leader helps others shine. If your team wins, you win. And how do you handle failure? I treat failure as feedback. But more importantly, I ask myself, did my people feel safe enough to try again? The room grew quiet. The panel was listening intently now. The older, silver-haired man, silent during Ryan's interview, finally spoke again. What would you do if your team made a decision you disagreed with? Daniel looked him in the eye. I would ask why they made it. I would listen. If I still disagreed, I'd guide them to the lesson. But I would never humiliate them. The man nodded slowly. The HR manager said, And what do you bring to a company like Globe Corps? Daniel answered without hesitation. Humility, patience, wisdom, but also a willingness to learn from those younger than me. There was a pause. The panel looked at each other. Thank you, Mr. Hart, the HR manager said. Daniel nodded. Thank you for your time. Back in the waiting room, Ryan was restless. He couldn't see the interview, but he felt something was off. Why were people being so polite to that man? Why did the receptionist treat him like royalty? And who was that quiet silver-haired guy? He checked his phone, checked the time, glanced at the door. When Daniel walked out, Ryan forced a smile. How'd it go? Daniel smiled. We'll see. Ryan leaned back in his chair, trying not to fidget. A few minutes later, all the candidates were called into the conference room. The HR manager stood at the front. Everyone quieted down. We want to thank all of you for being here today. Your resumes were impressive, and your interviews gave us insight into your strengths. She paused. But this company values something more than just talent. We value character, respect, how you treat others, especially those you don't think are important. Ryan's face twitched. The HR manager continued. There was someone here today who was not only a candidate but also an observer. Someone who watched how you behaved when you thought no one important was watching. Gasps. Murmurs. And then, the silver-haired man stood up and walked to the front. He looked around the room and smiled. My name, he said, is Daniel Hart, founder and chairman of Globe Corps. The room went silent. Ryan's face turned pale. The moment Daniel Hart revealed himself as the founder of Globe Corps, a heavy silence filled the room. Every candidate in the room stood frozen, not in awe, but in disbelief. Ryan's smile vanished instantly. His face slowly turned pale. He blinked hard, as if trying to reset what he'd just heard. Daniel Hart. The Daniel Hart. He tried to recall the company's history page on its website. Founder. Retired CEO. Silent partner. Net worth. Several $100 million. Ryan's thoughts raced. Wait, so, the old man? The guy I laughed at? The guy I mocked in front of everyone? He swallowed hard. Meanwhile, the other candidates stood respectfully as Daniel looked over them with quiet strength. The receptionist entered and handed him a glass of water with both hands, then exited quickly. Daniel turned to face the group. Most of you applied here today expecting a traditional job interview. A resume. A few questions. A yes or a no, he began. But here at Globe Corps, we don't just hire talent. We hire people. He let that sentence sit in the air for a moment. What you do in front of others is performance, he continued. But what you do when no one important is watching, that's character. Some candidates nodded slowly. A few lowered their heads. Ryan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Daniel walked slowly across the front of the room as he spoke. I joined this process not to judge, but to observe. Not to test your skills, but to understand your hearts. Some of you treated others with kindness. Some of you ignored those who needed help. And some of you decided who was worthy of your respect based only on their appearance. He turned to face the room again. A leader is someone who lifts others, even when it doesn't benefit them. His gaze landed briefly on Ryan. Ryan looked down. The HR manager stepped forward. After careful observation and discussion, we've decided to extend a formal offer to a candidate who not only showed leadership potential but kindness, composure, and humility. She called a name. It wasn't Ryan's. It was Emily Lopez, the young woman who had dropped her papers earlier. She gasped, visibly shocked. Me, she whispered. Daniel smiled. Yes. You showed patience, respect, and courage. That's the kind of leadership we need. The other candidates clapped politely. Some smiled genuinely. Emily was in tears. Ryan barely heard it. He was stuck in his own mind. A loop of embarrassment, shame, and disbelief. How could this happen? Daniel stepped forward again. But there's one more thing. The room grew quiet again. There was one candidate today who made mistakes. But I believe everyone deserves a second chance, if they are willing to grow. He looked directly at Ryan. Ryan met his eyes for a second, then quickly looked away. Ryan Matthews, Daniel said gently. You have skill. You have potential. But you need perspective. Ryan stood slowly, his face red. Sir, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disrespect you. Daniel raised a hand gently. I accept your apology. But this isn't about me. It's about who you become from this moment on. He turned to the HR manager. I'm offering Ryan a 3-month internship. No title. No leadership. Just learning. If he accepts it, he will work under the supervision of junior staff, assist where needed, and report directly to my office once a week. Ryan's mouth opened slightly. An internship? For someone like him? After everything he had accomplished? But something deeper stirred inside him, a realization. He'd come into this building to prove himself. He wanted power. He wanted recognition. But all he'd proven so far was pride. Now he had a different choice, humility. He looked at Daniel. Thank you, sir, he said quietly. I'd like to accept that offer. Daniel smiled and nodded once. Then welcome to Globe Corps. The group was dismissed. One by one, the candidates filed out. Emily was approached by HR for onboarding. A few congratulated her. Others shook Daniel's hand politely. Ryan lingered near the back. He didn't know what to do. Stay? Leave? Disappear? Daniel approached him. Ryan stood up straight. Mr. Hart, I know I've got a lot to learn. I appreciate this opportunity. Daniel looked at him calmly. Good. Then you'll begin tomorrow. No need to wear a suit. Just bring a notebook and be ready to listen. Ryan nodded. I will. Daniel started to walk away but paused. Oh, and Ryan. Yes, sir. You'd be amazed at what you can learn from people you once overlooked. With that, Daniel left the room. The next morning, Ryan arrived at Globe Corps at 7:55 a.m., 5 minutes early. He wore a plain shirt and slacks. No cologne. No expensive watch. He carried a notebook and a pen. He was assigned to work with Leo, the fresh graduate he had ignored in the waiting room. Leo was kind, surprisingly kind. He didn't mention anything about the interview day. He treated Ryan like an equal. They worked together on basic tasks, organizing documentation, sitting in meetings silently, and handling back-end processes. Ryan noticed things he'd never seen before. People listened more than they talked. Ideas were discussed, not dominated. Success wasn't shouted, it was shared. He watched Emily lead her new team, quietly, confidently. She asked more questions than she gave instructions. She celebrated others' ideas. And Daniel, he didn't sit in a high tower. He walked through departments, spoke to janitors, greeted interns by name. Everyone respected him, not because of his title, but because of his presence. Ryan began to change. He stopped speaking over people in meetings. He started asking for feedback. He began staying late to help coworkers. He took time to understand before acting. 3 weeks in, Daniel called him to his office. "How has it been?" he asked. Ryan smiled genuinely. "Challenging and amazing." Daniel nodded. "Do you still want to lead?" Ryan thought for a moment. "I think I want to serve first, then lead." Daniel leaned back in his chair and smiled. "Then you're on the right path." 3 months passed. Ryan Matthews, the once proud, sharp-tongued graduate, now sat quietly in a Globe Corps meeting room, scribbling notes while a junior engineer explained the latest prototype updates. His suit was gone, replaced by a comfortable company polo and jeans. His voice had softened. His posture was no longer stiff with arrogance, but calm and attentive. It was a Tuesday, just like the day of the interview. But everything was different. Ryan had learned to listen more than speak. His mornings began early. He brewed coffee for the team before the others arrived. He answered phones when reception was overwhelmed. He stayed late when interns needed help with formatting documents. He no longer introduced himself as an ex-startup founder. He introduced himself simply as, "Hi, I'm Ryan. How can I help?" And people began to notice. Leo, the junior employee who once looked up to Ryan with intimidation, now saw him as a genuine teammate. Emily, now officially team lead, often asked Ryan for technical input. And Daniel Hart, he watched from a distance, quietly, patiently. But Ryan still wondered, was it enough? He hadn't been offered a permanent position yet. He still had doubts, not about the company, but about himself. Could people ever truly change? Or was he still the same arrogant kid who mocked a man he didn't understand? One morning, Daniel summoned Ryan to his office. Ryan entered with a slight nod. "Good morning, sir." Daniel smiled warmly. "Have a seat, Ryan." Ryan sat, notebook in hand. "You've been here for 3 months," Daniel began. "How does it feel?" Ryan paused. "Honestly, humbling. I came here thinking I had all the answers, but I've realized I was asking the wrong questions." Daniel chuckled. "Like what?" Ryan looked up. "Like, how can I win? How can I stand out? Instead of, how can I serve? How can I grow with others?" Daniel nodded. "Growth begins with honesty. And you've earned something today." Ryan straightened in his seat. "Earned, sir?" Daniel placed a folder on the table. Inside was a formal contract, not for an internship, but for a full-time position, Product Strategy Associate. Ryan's eyes widened. "You're not being offered this because of your resume," Daniel said. "You're being offered this because of your reflection. You've shown what true leadership looks like, in its earliest form." Ryan swallowed hard. "Thank you. I won't let you down." Daniel smiled. "That's not the promise you need to make." Ryan blinked. "What do you mean?" Daniel leaned forward. "Don't promise me," he said. "Promise yourself that you'll never forget who you were when no one clapped for you. That you'll never step over another person to feel tall. And that if someone else ever mocks you, you'll remember this moment and show them grace." Ryan felt something shift in his chest. For the first time, he truly understood the weight of his second chance. "I promise," he said. Daniel nodded. "Good. Then your journey starts today, not as a star, but as a student of leadership." Ryan's first month in his new role was different. He was no longer shadowing. Now, he was expected to contribute. But the lessons he had learned in silence became his greatest tools. He helped organize projects, not with a loud voice, but with clarity and calm. He created systems to make life easier for his team. He volunteered for the boring tasks, data cleaning, client notes, calendar syncing. And slowly, his reputation began to shift. Ryan. He's the guy who'll back you up, even at 9 p.m. Ryan. He doesn't talk over people. He brings the shy ones into the conversation. Even people who had once rolled their eyes at him now invited him to lunch. But Ryan's biggest test came in the 4th week of his full-time job. A new intern joined the team. His name was Derek, young, smart, and, unfortunately, a lot like the old Ryan. He walked into meetings late, spoke like a TED Talk, interrupted others, called himself a future CEO. Ryan watched in silence. In the past, he would have rolled his eyes, maybe even competed with him. But now, he remembered Daniel's words, "Show them grace." After a particularly loud brainstorming session where Derek dominated the conversation, Ryan approached him privately. "Hey, Derek," he said with a smile. "Got a minute?" "Sure," Derek said. "What's up?" Ryan lowered his voice. "You've got sharp ideas. You clearly know your stuff. But if you let others speak too, you'll learn even more. Trust me." Derek gave a small smirk. "Fair enough. You sound like an old guy." Ryan laughed. "I learned from one." Derek stared at him, then nodded slowly. "All right. I'll dial it down." From that day, something shifted in Derek too. Not all at once, but enough. And for Ryan, it was a full-circle moment. He had become the mentor he once needed. Weeks turned into months. Ryan earned the trust of his team, the respect of his leaders, and eventually, a promotion. But titles didn't matter anymore. What mattered was this. He helped others before they asked. He didn't speak to be heard, he spoke to add value. He gave credit to the team, not to himself. One afternoon, he sat with Daniel again. This time, not as an intern, not as an observer, but as a peer. "Ryan," Daniel said, sipping tea, "what's the best thing you've learned here?" Ryan took a breath. "That leadership is not about being followed. It's about lifting others, even when no one sees it, even when they don't deserve it. Especially then." Daniel smiled. "You're ready." Ryan looked at him. "For what?" Daniel stood. "To lead, not with your voice, but with your example." That evening, Ryan walked through the same lobby where he once stood, mocking an old man he didn't know. Now, he understood. Leadership wasn't about being the loudest in the room. It was about being the last to leave, the first to help, and the one who remembers where he came from. And as he exited the building, the security guard smiled and waved. "Have a good night, Mr. Matthews." Ryan smiled back. "You too. And hey, let me grab you a coffee tomorrow morning." Globecorp's 11th floor was unusually quiet that Friday afternoon. It was the end of a long quarter, product reviews, feedback reports, sprint retrospectives. Most teams had clocked out early. The lights in the hallway dimmed slightly, the air filled with a gentle hum of ventilation. But Ryan stayed. He sat at his desk, the last person in the strategy wing, staring at the glowing screen of his laptop. In front of him was a document titled, "Leadership Reflections," for internal archives. He had been asked by Daniel to write a piece for the company's leadership library, a set of essays and stories available to new managers and team leads. Ryan hesitated at first. He didn't see himself as a writer. But Daniel had said, "Real leaders don't write to impress. They write to reflect." And so Ryan sat, the keyboard waiting. His fingers hovered. Where should I begin? Should he talk about the day he mocked Daniel? Should he confess everything? Or should he skip that and focus only on the lessons? No. If this was to help someone, it had to be honest. He began typing. 3 months ago, I made a mistake. I laughed at a man I didn't know. I judged him by his clothes, his age, his silence. I thought I was the smartest man in the room, the most promising, the future of the company. But I was blind. That man turned out to be Daniel Hart, the founder of GlobeCore, and now my mentor. And in those first few hours of meeting him, I failed. Not because I lacked skill, but because I lacked humility. What followed was not a punishment, but a gift, a second chance. And I've spent every day since then trying to be the kind of person who would never make that mistake again. If you're reading this and you think leadership is about being in charge, stop. Leadership is about building others. Especially when no one's watching. Especially when it's hard. Especially when the people you're building seem to offer you nothing in return. He paused, exhaled, then kept typing. You will meet people in life who seem insignificant, too quiet, too old, too behind, too different. Don't overlook them. I promise, some of them are holding doors you don't even know exist. Some of them are here to teach you things you can't Google. And if you're lucky, like me, you'll meet someone like Daniel. And maybe one day, you'll be someone's Daniel too. Ryan leaned back in his chair. The words weren't fancy. They didn't sound like something from a business book. But they were true. And for the first time, he didn't need applause. He needed only to speak honestly. Later that night, as Ryan left the office, he noticed Daniel standing near the elevators, sipping tea from a travel mug. "Still here?" Daniel asked with a gentle grin. Ryan held up his laptop bag. "Just finished the leadership piece." "Good," Daniel replied. "Did you tell the truth?" Ryan nodded. "Every word." Daniel smiled. "Then it will be useful." They stood there for a moment, quiet. No need to fill the silence. Finally, Ryan asked, "Why me? Why did you choose to give me a second chance?" Daniel looked at him thoughtfully. "Because once," he said, "someone gave me one." Flashback. 35 years earlier. A young man, scruffy beard, nervous hands, too much pride and too little experience, sat across from an investor. The investor was in his 60s. Quiet, polished, wise. "You've got good ideas," the investor had said. "But your mouth runs faster than your heart." "I just want to succeed," the young Daniel Hart had said. "Then start by listening," the investor replied. Daniel never forgot that conversation. That investor never put a dime into his company, but he changed Daniel's life. Back in the present, Ryan looked at Daniel with new understanding. "You used to be me, didn't you?" Daniel laughed. "Worse." Ryan smiled. "Thank you," he said. Daniel clapped him on the shoulder. "Pass it on." Over the next weeks, Ryan made it his mission to do just that. He coached new interns, not with pride, but with patience. He asked the quiet ones what they thought. He invited the unsure ones to present. And when someone messed up, he didn't scold. He shared his story. He even found himself repeating Daniel's words. Leadership isn't loud. It's consistent. You don't earn respect by demanding it. You earn it by giving it. And if you want to go far, bring others with you. One day, a junior developer named Mina came to him nervously. "Ryan, can I talk to you?" "Of course," he said. "I messed up a deployment. It's going to cost the team hours." Ryan leaned back, nodded slowly, and said, "Okay, let's fix it. And then let's learn from it." She stared at him. "You're not mad." "I've made bigger mistakes," he said. "And someone once helped me through mine." Mina smiled weakly. "Thanks. You're like, different from the other leads." Ryan chuckled. "Good. I'm trying to be." That weekend, Ryan received an email. Subject: Internal Promotion Consideration. From Daniel Hart. To Executive Team CC, HR. "I would like to nominate Ryan Matthews for a senior leadership training track. He has demonstrated not only improved technical understanding, but personal growth. He has the rare quality of reflection, which is the foundation of wisdom." Ryan read the message twice. He didn't smile right away. He sat quietly, let it soak in. Then he wrote his reply. "Thank you. I hope to make others proud, but more importantly, to help them become proud of themselves." 2 years later. The Globe Core campus looked very different from when Ryan Matthews had first walked through its tall glass doors. The company had expanded, 3 new floors, a remote branch in Singapore, and a redesigned hybrid team model. But what changed most wasn't the architecture or the technology. It was the culture. And Ryan had become one of the central pieces of that transformation. No, he wasn't the CEO. Not even a senior VP. His title was still modest, product strategy lead. But across the building, from HR to engineering, people turned to him, not because of a title, but because of trust. One rainy Thursday morning, a problem landed on Ryan's desk. The Jakarta office was experiencing severe workflow issues. Mistrust between design and development. Missed deadlines. Junior staff afraid to speak up. The project was failing, and they needed help. Daniel Hart walked into Ryan's office. Yes, Daniel still came in twice a week, though he had officially retired from executive duties. "I need someone to go to Jakarta," he said plainly. Ryan looked up from his monitor. "Who's going?" "You," Daniel replied. Ryan blinked. "Why me?" Daniel smiled. "Because I trust you to listen before you lead." 3 days later, Ryan stood in the Globe Core Jakarta office. He didn't carry a team. He didn't bring a new rulebook. He brought a notebook. And a question. What's really going on? At first, the team was hesitant. They expected someone to fly in, throw blame around, and tell them how to do their jobs. But Ryan did the opposite. He sat down in meetings and took notes. He asked the newest employee first. He asked the quietest person in the room. He offered to help with tasks. He stayed late. He washed his own coffee mug. And slowly, something shifted. One afternoon, as the team reviewed the sprint backlog, a young QA analyst named Tasha spoke up. "Actually, I think one of these issues isn't a bug, it's a back-end design problem." The room went quiet. Normally, Tasha didn't speak. She had only been with the company for 3 months. The back-end lead raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" Before she could answer, Ryan stepped in, gently. "Let's check it together. If she's wrong, we learn something. If she's right, we save time." They checked. She was right. The back-end lead nodded slowly. "Good catch." That moment changed everything. After that, junior voices were heard more. People began offering feedback. Teams started holding retrospectives more honestly. And Ryan, he took none of the credit. By the end of the 3rd week, deadlines were back on track. The Jakarta team, once fractured, now felt like a family. On his last day there, the local office manager said, "We were expecting a manager, but we got a mentor." Ryan smiled. "Same thing. If you do it right." Back in the headquarters, Ryan submitted his final report. Not filled with jargon or charts. Just observations. Stories. Conversations. He titled it, "What Happens When You Listen First?" Daniel read it in his home study the next morning. He emailed back just one line. "This is how legacy is built." Weeks passed. Ryan resumed his usual work in product development. But something lingered in his mind. A whisper. A new question. What if this, all of this, is just preparation for something bigger? He loved Globe Core. But he couldn't ignore the tug in his chest. A dream was forming. Something he never thought he'd want back when he was hungry for power and fame. He wanted to build something from scratch, not for ego, but for impact. So he scheduled a meeting with Daniel. In the rooftop garden, they sat beneath the soft afternoon light. "I think I want to try," Ryan said slowly. "Try what?" Daniel asked, though he already knew. "My own company. A different kind of tech firm, one that builds both products and people." Daniel sipped his tea. "Are you asking for permission?" Ryan laughed. "Maybe." Daniel nodded. "Then I give it. Go. Build something honest." Ryan hesitated. Would you advise me? I mean, part-time." Daniel looked out across the skyline. "I will not advise you," he said slowly. "But I will believe in you." Ryan was silent. Daniel turned back. "If I advise you, you'll still think you need me." But if you build from belief, you'll surprise yourself. Ryan smiled. Thank you. Daniel stood and extended his hand. One condition. Ryan shook it. Name it. Pay it forward. And so, Ryan resigned, not with drama, not with a press release. Quietly, respectfully. He wrote personal letters to every team he had worked with, thanking them. His last internal email read, I leave not because I want to leave Globe Corps, but because Globe Corps taught me how to leave well. My hope is to build a place where leadership isn't rare, but normal. If you ever feel invisible, unheard, or unsure, just remember, that's where I started too. Ryan. He launched Lumatech 6 months later. No investors at first. Just a small office, 5 laptops, and a whiteboard. But the heart of the company was different. Every employee had a say in decision-making. No one was allowed to interrupt during feedback rounds. The onboarding manual opened with this line. Before we write a single line of code, we write respect into our culture. Clients noticed. People noticed. And slowly, quietly, Lumatech grew. Not because it was loud, but because it was different. One night, after a long day at the new office, Ryan sat alone, sipping coffee. The lights were dim. The windows reflected his tired but content expression. He opened his laptop and reread his old essay from Globe Corps. Don't overlook quiet people. Don't rush to speak. Don't lead to be seen. He smiled. He wasn't trying to become someone anymore. He was trying to help others become themselves. And that, finally, felt like success. 2 years had passed since Ryan Matthews launched Lumatech, and the little startup that began with 5 laptops had grown into a 50-person team, a national reputation, and a culture that even rival companies tried to study. It wasn't the profits that made Lumatech famous. It was how the company made people feel, seen, heard, trusted. And it all started with a mistake Ryan never forgot. It was a rainy Monday when the knock came. Ryan was sitting in a small conference room at Lumatech HQ, reviewing a UI wireframe. He had his sleeves rolled up, a cold cup of coffee beside him, and soft music playing in the background. The door creaked open. Sorry to interrupt, said Jaya, his executive assistant. There's a walk-in applicant asking to speak to someone directly. He doesn't have an appointment or a resume, but he insists on meeting a decision-maker. Ryan raised an eyebrow. A walk-in? Jaya nodded, a bit amused. Young guy. Maybe 21. Talks like he knows everything. Has that eager but doesn't listen vibe. Ryan smiled faintly. Bring him in, he said. Jaya blinked. Really? Ryan chuckled. Trust me. A moment later, the young man entered. He was tall, wearing a slim black shirt, a blazer too big for him, and shoes that had never seen polish. In his hand was a crumpled notebook. His eyes scanned the room quickly, sizing things up. Hey, he said confidently. I'm Zakir. Ryan stood and shook his hand. Nice to meet you, Zakir. I'm Ryan. Zakir blinked. Oh, you're the guy. Ryan nodded. The guy. Zakir grinned. Cool. I read your Medium articles. Pretty inspiring stuff, man. Thanks, Ryan said warmly. So, what brings you here today? Zakir pulled out his notebook and started talking fast. I've got this idea, an app that tracks your dopamine levels based on screen activity and suggests when to take breaks. I've coded a prototype. Just need support, mentorship, maybe a partnership. I could bring serious energy to your team. Ryan smiled patiently. That's ambitious. I know, right? Zakir replied, nodding quickly. I figured you'd get it. I mean, you're all about disrupting culture with empathy or whatever. Ryan paused, then gestured for him to sit. What do you want, Zakir? Really? Zakir blinked. I just told you. I want a chance to prove myself. No, Ryan said gently. What do you really want? Zakir fidgeted. I don't want to be ignored. Ryan looked at him carefully. That's honest, he said. Zakir shrugged. People look at me and see some dropout kid with no discipline. But I'm sharp. I know I'm smart. I just don't know how to get in. Ryan nodded slowly. You remind me of someone, he said. Zakir tilted his head. Who? Myself. A few years ago, when I thought the room owed me something just because I was eager. Zakir smirked. And now the room actually does. Ryan chuckled. No. Now I understand the room doesn't owe anyone anything. But if you walk in trying to build it, not impress it, people notice. Zakir sat quietly for a moment. That's deep. Ryan leaned forward. I'll make you a deal. Come work here. Not as a co-founder. Not as a rock star. But as an apprentice. Shadow meetings. Do the boring stuff. Ask questions. Listen. If you do that for 90 days, we'll talk again. Zakir hesitated. That's it. Ryan smiled. That's everything. 3 weeks into Zakir's apprenticeship, he was still struggling. He arrived late twice. Interrupted a UX lead mid-presentation. Sent a Slack message to a senior engineer suggesting they redesign everything. Ryan didn't scold him. He invited him for a walk. The two of them strolled through a quiet park near the office. The grass was wet from last night's rain, the air fresh. Ryan spoke gently. You're not failing, Zakir. You're just fighting too much to prove you belong. What would happen if you stopped trying to impress and just learned? Zakir was quiet. I guess I'm scared no one will take me seriously. Ryan smiled. I used to feel the same way. You know what changed that? Zakir shook his head. Respecting others first. Especially when I didn't have to. That night, Zakir stayed back at the office. He cleaned the whiteboards. Organized the shared folders. Wrote a quiet email apologizing to the UX lead. The next day, people noticed. No one said much, but they smiled more. Zakir started coming in early. He took notes. He listened more. Ryan watched from afar. Not with pride, but with hope. Weeks passed. Zakir changed. Not overnight, but genuinely. He volunteered to train a new intern. He offered to help the facilities manager fix the projector. And one Friday, he handed Ryan a sealed envelope. What's this? Ryan asked. A letter I wrote to myself, Zakir said. For when I first got here. I figured, if someone like me comes in again someday, you could give this to them. Ryan opened it after Zakir left. It read, Dear new kid, you're probably here to prove how smart you are. Stop. Be useful first. Sweep the floor if no one else will. The moment you realize leadership isn't about spotlight, you'll finally step into it. Trust me. Zakir, former idiot. Ryan laughed. Folded the note. Saved it in his drawer. Another circle had completed. Months later, at a leadership conference, Ryan stood on stage. The event was called Quiet Leadership, Building Culture Without Ego. He wore no suit. Just a simple shirt, jeans, and sneakers. He told the audience the story of Daniel Hart, of Globe Corps, of a young man who once laughed at an old one. He didn't hide his shame. He used it. People wept. People clapped. Some just sat in silence. After his talk, a young woman approached him. I always thought I had to change my personality to lead, she said. Ryan smiled. No. You just have to change what you value. That night, Ryan received a call. It was from Daniel's daughter. Ryan, she said softly, I wanted to let you know. Dad passed away this morning. Peacefully. Ryan's heart sank. He hung up, sat on his porch in the dark, and cried. He didn't cry out of regret. He had said thank you. Many times. He cried because the world had lost someone rare. Someone who led without force. Someone who loved without fear. A week later, at Daniel's memorial, Ryan was invited to speak. He stepped to the podium and paused. I used to think leadership was about being first, he began. Daniel taught me that it's really about being last, so others can go first. He looked at the crowd. I am not who I am today because of books, or degrees, or titles. I am who I am because one man chose not to crush me when I deserved it, but to correct me. He saw who I could become when I couldn't. He stepped down without applause. Just silence. The day after Daniel Hart's memorial service, the world seemed quieter, not just in volume, but in rhythm. For Ryan Matthews, something fundamental had shifted. The man who once showed him the path had now walked his final steps. But Daniel's presence didn't vanish. It echoed. In conversations. In values. In the way people at Globe Corps greeted new interns with warmth instead of suspicion. In the way managers now opened meetings with silence, inviting others to speak first. And most of all, it echoed in Ryan, in how he now led Lumitech. 2 weeks later, Ryan stood before a group of 12 new hires during onboarding. There were engineers, designers, a marketing associate, even a finance intern. Each had bright eyes and sharp credentials. But also uncertainty, the kind of quiet fear that follows you into a new chapter. Ryan greeted them with a simple smile. "Welcome to Lumitech," he said. "I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to serve you." They looked confused. He continued, "This company was built on a second chance. I got one. And my job now is to create an environment where everyone here, no matter their title, gets one too." He paused, then added, "You won't be judged for being wrong. You'll be judged for staying silent when your voice could help someone else." The room was quiet. Then, slowly, heads began to nod. That afternoon, as Ryan walked back to his office, a developer named Nadia approached him. "May I ask something personal?" she said. "Sure," Ryan replied. "I read your story about Mr. Hart. How do you keep his lessons alive now that he's gone?" Ryan looked out the window, thinking. "I live them in how I treat people," he said. "In how I make decisions. But also in how I remember to stay small, even when things grow big." He paused. "Sometimes, I write letters I never send. To him." Nadia tilted her head. "Really?" Ryan smiled. "Yeah. It helps me keep listening." That night, in his home office, Ryan pulled out his journal. The pages were worn, filled with notes, questions, ideas, and unsent letters. He opened to a blank page and began to write. "Dear Daniel, it's strange. The office is louder now without you in it. I don't mean actual sound. I mean the weight of your silence, the way it kept people honest. I keep wanting to show you things. The new product our team launched. The mentorship program we just started. The fact that someone asked me today, 'How do you want to be remembered?' And I thought of you. Because you never tried to be remembered. You just tried to be useful. You taught me to bend before I break. To ask before I assume. To apologize without ego. And to make space for the ones no one claps for. I hope I'm doing that. Some days, I still get it wrong. I talk too much. I forget to breathe before answering. But then I remember how you waited for me to grow, not because you had to, but because you believed I could. I do the same now. For others. I guess that's how legacy works. It's not carved in stone. It's passed hand to hand, in silence, in second chances, in how we treat the next person who reminds us of who we used to be. Thank you, Daniel. I'll keep walking the path. Ryan." 3 months later, Lumiteca's annual company retreat took place in a small lakeside town. The theme, "Lead like no one's watching." Ryan stood under a canopy as light rain tapped gently on the plastic roof. He looked out at the 70-person team, now laughing, eating, sharing stories from a year. And he whispered to himself, "You'd like this, Daniel." That night, the team gathered for a final session. No PowerPoints. Just a bonfire. Each person was given a card that said, "What would you thank your younger self for surviving?" One by one, they read them aloud. Some thanked themselves for leaving toxic jobs. Some for breaking family expectations. Some for not giving up. When it was Ryan's turn, he simply said, "I thank myself for failing early, so I could grow humbly." The group fell silent. Then someone asked, "What made you grow?" He didn't hesitate. "A man who let me fail, without letting me fall." That evening, As the fire died down and people wandered off to their cabins, Ryan stayed behind. He picked up a small log, placed it on the last embers, and watched it glow. He pulled out his phone and typed a single line into his notes app. Maybe the greatest thing a leader can do is be forgotten by name, but remembered in character. He locked the screen, put the phone away, and looked up at the stars. Years passed. Lumatech grew beyond borders. It partnered with NGOs, mentored underserved communities, and became known not just for what it built, but how it built people. Ryan never became the loudest voice in the room. He didn't need to. His presence was felt in how others led, in how junior employees paused before interrupting, in how meetings began with listening, in how mistakes became lessons, not labels. People often asked him, "What's your secret to leadership?" He would smile and reply, "It's not about who you are in the spotlight. It's who you are when you think no one is watching." And sometimes, late at night, after the emails were done and the lights were dim, he would open that drawer. Inside, still folded gently, was a letter. Not written by him, but by a once loud, once lost young man named Zakir. And Ryan would read it with a quiet smile, grateful that the old man who once walked into that waiting room chose to stay silent when he could have chosen to leave.